He families who lived through frontier winters knew something we've forgotten. They understood how to turn a freezing cabin into a warm sanctuary when the temperature outside plummeted to 40 below zero. They mastered techniques that kept a fire burning for 12 hours straight without modern technology. They created insulation systems that rival anything we have today, using nothing but moss, animal hair, and mud. And when everything went wrong, when the fire died out, when supplies ran low, when blizzards trapped them for weeks, they had emergency protocols that saved lives. In our modern world of central heating, electric blankets, and weather apps, we've lost touch with what it took to survive a winter night when failure meant death before dawn. How did these frontier families do it? What engineering marvels did they create out of logs and stone? And why do we know so little about these incredible survival systems that kept our ancestors alive? Hey, quick thing before we dive in. If you actually listen to these regularly, hit like or subscribe. I always wonder where everyone's tuning in from, so drop your city and time in the comments. Tonight, we're heading to the Montana frontier, 1880s. But first, get comfortable. Adjust your pillows. Pull up that blanket. You're going to want to be cozy. The first thing that hits you is the cold on your face. Brutal, sharp, like someone slapping you awake. Your eyes snap open to the pre-dawn darkness of a Montana winter morning in 1883. Outside, it's 30 degrees below zero. Inside the cabin, it's not much warmer. Your nose and cheeks sting from the cold, while the rest of your body is buried under a pile of quilts, furs, and whatever else the Morrison family could find to layer on their beds. Beside you, your younger siblings are huddled in sleep, their breath forming tiny clouds that hang in the frigid air. The night's fire has died down to just a few glowing embers, barely visible in the Castian stove across the small cabin. Those embers are life itself. If they go out completely, the family faces serious trouble. Not like your cozy bed, where a broken heater just means an uncomfortable night and maybe a call to the repair service. For the Morrisons and thousands of frontier families like them, a failed heating system during a Montana winter could mean death before morning. Thomas Morrison, your father, is already moving. You hear the creak of his bed as he rises, followed by the soft thud of his feet hitting the plank floor. Unlike your warm bed, the boards feel like ice beneath him. He doesn't waste time dressing. In winter, he sleeps in most of his clothes, but now he immediately heads for the stove, hunched against the cold, moving with practiced urgency. Sarah, he whispers to your mother, I need light. You can barely make out her shape as she reaches for the bedside table where a candle and matches wait. The scratch of the match is unnaturally loud in the silent cabin. For a moment, the tiny flame illuminates her face, determined, with frost caught in her eyelashes. Damn cold, your father mutters, opening the stove door carefully. The hinges creak from the cold, a sound that would normally be annoying but now confirms the metal hasn't cracked. A broken stove would be catastrophic. Through narrowed eyes, he examines the coals. You hold your breath. The entire family is about to start their day based on what he sees in that firebox. Still got some life, he says, relief evident in his voice. Hand me the kindling box. This isn't just a casual morning fire. What you're witnessing is the execution of a sophisticated thermal survival system that frontier families perfected through brutal trial and error. Every movement your father makes follows a precise sequence developed over generations, techniques passed down because lives literally depended on them. First, He arranges small bone-dry splinters of pine kindling that was prepared weeks ago and kept near the stove specifically for this moment. He doesn't just toss them in haphazardly, he builds a careful structure over the coals, creating space for airflow while ensuring the smallest pieces make direct contact with the embers. This kindling down to the last handful, he says. John, we'll need to cut more today. That's you. At 12 years old, you're old enough to help with the critical fire management tasks. You nod, though he can't see you in the dark. The kindling has to be perfect. Too thick and it won't catch from the coals. Too thin and it will burn up before igniting the larger pieces. Your father leans down, puts his face near the stove opening, and gently blows on the coals. Not hard puffs like you might imagine, but long, steady breaths that provide just enough oxygen to bring the embers back to life without dispersing their heat. It's a skill that took him years to master. The technique works. A small flame appears, tentatively licking at the kindling. He adds slightly larger pieces now, angling them to create a miniature log cabin structure that maximizes airflow. The fire begins to grow. Emma, check the water bucket, your mother says to your older sister. Emma slides reluctantly from under the covers, grabbing a shawl to wrap around her night clothes. She moves to the corner where a bucket sits on a small table and reaches in. Frozen solid, she reports, tapping the ice surface all the way through. Your mother sigh. We'll need to melt snow again. She gets up now, too, the bed creaking as her weight leaves it. The younger children, your 2 little brothers and baby sister, remain bundled together, generating precious shared body heat. At ages 6, 4, and 2, they'll be kept in bed as long as possible this morning. Thomas, how's the temperature? Your mother asks, pulling a woolen dress over her nightgown without removing the nightgown first. Layers are survival. Your father doesn't need a thermometer. Decades on the frontier have made his body a precise measuring instrument. It must have hit 40 below during the night. Coldest yet this winter. Colder than last February, she asks, referring to a particularly brutal cold snap that froze their water barrel inside the house and killed the neighbor's cow in its barn. Not quite that bad, he says, but it's only January. We've got the worst still ahead. He's building up the fire now, adding slightly larger sticks, waiting patiently between each addition. Too much wood, too quickly would smother the fragile flames. This daily fire-starting ritual isn't just about comfort. It's the difference between life and death. The knowledge of exactly how to coax a fire back from nearly dead embers is a skill more valuable than gold on the frontier. John, time to get up. Your mother calls to you. We need water for breakfast. Reluctantly, you slide out from under the warm quilts, the cold air hitting you like a physical blow. Your fingers are stiff, barely able to grip the clothes you reach for. You dress quickly, adding a second pair of wool socks that your mother knitted last fall from sheep's wool that your family processed themselves. Outside, the pre-dawn world is eerily beautiful and absolutely deadly. The stars are impossibly bright in the black sky, and the snow reflects enough light that you can see your way to the shed without a lantern. Your breath freezes instantly, forming ice crystals in your scarf. You pull it tighter around your face, leaving just enough space for your eyes. The shed door has frozen shut overnight. You have to shoulder it hard. 3 times before the ice cracks and it swings open. Inside, you grab the snow shovel, a crude wooden scoop with metal banding that your father made last winter, and head to the cleanest patch of snow you can find. You've been taught to never collect snow from near the cabin walls or outbuildings where it might be contaminated. You move toward the edge of the clearing instead, where fresh snow sits untouched. The snow is so cold it squeaks under your boots, and it's light and dry, powder that barely holds together when scooped. This kind of snow yields less water when melted, so you'll need to fill the bucket extra full. The morning air burns your lungs with each breath. Your fingers, despite the mittens, begin to ache with cold after just a few minutes. You work quickly, filling the wooden bucket with clean snow, packing it down, then adding more until it's heaped high. By the time you return to the cabin, the fire has begun to warm the space nearest the stove. Your father has added the first small logs now, arranging them carefully to create a coal bed that will last. The stove's metal sides are starting to ping and creak as they heat up and expand. "Good job," your mother says, taking the snow bucket. She places it near enough to the stove to melt, but not so close that it might cause a dangerous flare-up of steam that could crack the stove's cast iron. "Now, help your father with the bigger logs while I get breakfast started." Your father is already at the woodpile inside the cabin, a precisely stacked arrangement of split logs organized by size and type of wood. This indoor supply is the result of months of preparation. Trees felled in spring split and stacked to season through summer and fall, then the best pieces brought inside to stay dry during winter. "We need oak for the main morning fire," he explains, "though you already know this. Pine burns too fast and hot, good for starting, but not for lasting. Hickory is best for overnight, but we'll use that later. Oak gives us the steady heat we need to get through the morning. The oak logs are thick and heavy. Your father chooses 3, each about forearm length and as thick as your wrist. These aren't randomly selected. He's considering their shape, the pattern of the grain, even the subtle differences in weight that tell him about their moisture content. Remember, John, he says, handing you one of the logs, we're not just building a fire. We're building a heat system that has to work perfectly every time. There's no room for error here. A poorly constructed fire might burn too quickly, wasting precious wood. Or worse, it might go out while everyone's working outside, allowing the cabin to freeze. By late afternoon, it would be uninhabitable. By now, Emma has set up the small folding table near the stove and is helping your mother prepare breakfast. The menu never varies much in winter. Cornmeal mush, maybe with a bit of molasses, if supplies allow, and coffee for the adults. On special days, there might be salt, pork, or bacon, but meat is carefully rationed during the coldest months. The younger children are awake now, still bundled in their bed, but sitting up, waiting for the cabin to warm enough for them to venture out from under the quilts. Little Michael, the 4-year-old, has his hand wrapped in the fur of the family dog, a large mixed breed named Buck, who sleeps with the children during winter nights, providing extra warmth. "Mama, it's so cold, my teeth hurt," complained 6-year-old William. "Stay under the covers a bit longer," your mother replies. "It'll warm up soon enough." The baby Catherine doesn't complain. At 2, she's already adapted to the rhythm of frontier winters. She simply burrows deeper into the bedding, only her eyes and the top of her head visible. Your father returns to the stove with the oak logs. He opens the door carefully, examines the fire with an expert eye, then places the first log precisely where it will catch best without disrupting the existing flames. The fire hisses and pops as the new wood begins to heat. "Perfect," he murmurs more to himself than anyone else. He closes the stove door and adjusts the damper, a critical component that controls airflow and thus the rate of burning, to open, and the fire burns too fast, too closed, and it might smolder and produce dangerous smoke. Your mother has placed a cast iron pot on top of the stove filled with the snow you collected. It's already beginning to melt, turning first to slush and then to water. Next to it sits a coffee pot and a larger pot for the cornmeal mush. Nothing is wasted. The same fire that heats the cabin cooks the food and melts snow for drinking, cooking, and the minimal washing that can be afforded during the coldest days. John, check the windows, your father instructs. Make sure the coverings are secure. Each window in the cabin has been prepared for winter with multiple layers of protection. First, rags have been stuffed into any gaps around the frame. Then, oiled paper covers the glass, a poor man's insulation that allows some light while reducing heat loss. Finally, heavy quilts hang over each window, further trapping the heat inside. You go to each window, making sure the quilts are properly hung and the rags haven't fallen out. At the east-facing window, you pull the quilt aside momentarily to peer out. The first hint of dawn is appearing, a faint lightening of the black sky. Sun's coming, you report. Good, your father says. We've got firewood to cut today, and I'd rather not do it in the dark. The fire is really catching now. The stove surface has become hot enough that the snow in the pot is melting rapidly. Your mother stirs the cornmeal into the pot with a wooden spoon, creating the mush that will provide the calories needed for work in the cold. The cabin, so frigid just 30 minutes ago, is beginning to warm, at least within a 6 feet radius of the stove. The temperature difference is dramatic. You can actually see the boundary where warm air meets cold, like a wavering invisible wall. Your mother notices, too. Emma, bring Catherine over to the warm side now. Mind her feet stay covered. Emma retrieves the toddler, keeping her wrapped in a small quilt, and brings her near the stove. The little girl's face, pinched with cold, relaxes as she feels the warmth. Thomas, don't forget we're low on lamp oil, your mother says as she works. If this cold spell lasts, we'll be in darkness by next week. Your father nods grimly. I know. I'm hoping to get to town before the next storm, but that sky looks threatening. This is the reality of winter survival, a constant calculation of supplies, weather, and needs. Every decision carries weight. Go to town for supplies and risk getting caught in a storm, or stay home and risk running out of essentials. Cut more firewood today, or repair the loose chinking in the north wall. Each choice could have life or death consequences by now. The cabin has reached what passes for warm during a Montana winter morning. Perhaps 45 near the stove, still freezing near the walls. The frost on the inside of the walls hasn't melted. It simply glistens in the growing firelight. Breakfast, your mother announces. The family gathers around the small table, all except your father, who takes his bowl to the door. I need to check the animals, he says, pulling on his heavy coat, a furland canvas garment that reaches to his knees. It's too cold for them to be in the lean-to. Your mother protests. Bring the chickens inside. The cow, too, if you have to. He shakes his head. Cow's too big for the cabin door, but I've got her well wrapped in the barn. I banked extra hay against the walls last night. Chickens might have to come in, though. With that, he opens the door and steps out, letting in a blast of Arctic air that cuts through the cabin's hard-won warmth. He closes it quickly behind him. The rest of you eat quickly, the hot cornmeal warming you from the inside. There's no talking during meals in winter. It wastes heat and time. Every calorie counts. Every moment of exposure to the cold requires energy the body needs for survival. John, when you're done, help me prepare the heated stones, your mother says between bites. The heated stones are another crucial part of the frontier thermal management system. Fist-sized rocks collected from the creek bed in summer are kept near the stove. Throughout the day, they absorb heat from the fire. At night, they're wrapped in rags and placed in the beds, providing hours of gentle warmth. You select 4 stones from beside the stove, using a rag to protect your hands from their heat. They're almost too hot to handle, which is perfect, though. Stay warm until midday if properly wrapped. Your mother expertly bundles each stone in several layers of cloth. Bought first, a thin cotton rag that can withstand the direct heat, then wool scraps for insulation. Finally, a piece of old blanket to hold it all together. She secures each bundle with twine. Put these in the children's beds, she instructs, one at the foot of each bed under the quilts, but not touching their skin directly. You place the heated stones as directed, carefully tucking them under the covers. Within minutes, the bedding will capture their warmth, creating pockets of heat that will last for hours. The door opens again, and your father returns, carrying a wooden crate of chickens. The birds are unusually quiet, subdued by the cold. It's bad out there, he reports, setting the crate in the corner farthest from the sleeping areas. Thermometer on the barn wall broke in the night. Glass shattered from the cold. Your mother looks up sharply. And the cow, she's alive but shivering badly. I gave her extra feed and stuffed more hay around her. I'll check again in an hour. He stamps his feet, knocking snow from his boots. The well's frozen solid. We'll be melting snow for at least a week, I reckon. This news lands heavily. Melting snow for all water needs. Drinking, cooking, minimal washing requires significant firewood. It's an added strain on already carefully managed resources. How's our wood supply looking? Your mother asks, though she already knows the answer. We've got about 8 days' worth inside. Maybe another week's worth in the covered stack by the barn. He removes his coat, hanging it on a peg where the frost on its surface will melt near the stove's heat. We'll need to cut more today. No matter what, the reality of frontier winter survival becomes clear in this moment. There is no rest, no day off, no break from the constant work of staying alive. Every day requires specific, critical tasks that cannot be postponed. Your father sits at the table now, quickly eating his cornmeal mush, which has already cooled considerably in the brief time he was outside. He doesn't complain. Cold food is just another reality of winter life. John and I will head out to cut wood as soon as it's fully light, he says between bites. Emma can help with the barn chores today since it's too cold for the little ones to go out. At 15, Emma is considered old enough to handle most adult tasks. She nods, though she clearly isn't looking forward to venturing into the killing cold. I'll need to repack the snow banked against the north wall, your father continues. It's drifted away and I can feel the draft coming through. The snowbank is another ingenious part of frontier insulation systems. Piling snow against the cabin walls creates an additional barrier against the wind and helps insulate the structure, but it requires constant maintenance, especially after windy nights. What about the ice on the roof? Your mother asks. Is it building up near the chimney again? Your father nods grimly. I'll have to clear it before we go for wood. Can't risk it melting and damming up if we get a warm spell. Ice dams are a serious threat to cabin survival. If snow on the roof melts from chimney heat, then refreezes at the edges, it can create a dam that traps more snowmelt, eventually forcing water under the shingles and into the cabin. A leaking roof in winter could be catastrophic. The sky outside is lightening now, the darkness giving way to a grey dawn. The temperature will rise slightly with the sun, perhaps to -20 if you're lucky, making outdoor work marginally less dangerous. Your father finishes his breakfast and stands already, planning the day's critical tasks in his mind. John, get your warmest clothes on. We'll start with the roof ice, then check the animals again, then head to the woodlot. You nod, knowing what's ahead. Hours of exhausting, freezing work that must be done perfectly despite numbed fingers and the constant threat of frostbite. There's no room for complaints, no space for weakness. Winter survival demands everything. As you pull on your second pair of wool socks, you glance at the window. The oiled paper glows with the first real light of dawn, illuminating the frost patterns that have formed on its surface overnight. Delicate, crystalline structures, beautiful and deadly. At least it's not snowing, you think, searching for any positive aspect to the day ahead. Your father reads your thoughts. Storm's coming, though, he says, looking toward the same window. I can feel it in my bones. We've got maybe 6 hours before it hits. 6 hours to cut enough wood to survive what might be days of blizzard conditions. 6 hours to secure animals, check the cabin's insulation, prepare for the worst. Just another winter day on the Montana frontier, where every sunrise is a victory and every successfully managed fire is the difference between life and death. And somewhere in the back of your mind, as you prepare to face the deadly cold, you wonder how many more winters your family can survive like this. How many more mornings of frozen water and desperate fire starting. How many more days of constant life or death, labor. But there's no time for such thoughts now. The fire is burning, the cabin is warming, and there's work to be done. Survival work, the kind our ancestors mastered, and we've forgotten. In your comfortable modern bed, you should be thankful that bedroom thermometer reading 68. The pioneers would have considered that a miracle beyond imagination. You step outside behind your father, and the cold steals your breath away. It's the kind of cold that doesn't just make you shiver. It makes you wonder how anything survives out here. The kind that turns your nostril hairs brittle and freezes your eyelashes together. If you blink too long, keep moving, your father says, his voice muffled through his scarf. Standing still is how you die out here. The sun is just cresting the eastern hills, casting long blue shadows across the snow. Despite the sunlight, the temperature remains well below zero. You can tell by how the snow squeaks under your boots. That particular high-pitched sound only happens in the deepest cold. Your father hands you a wooden snow rake, a homemade tool with a long handle and flat wooden blade. Start on the south corner while I check the chimney, he instructs. You begin, scraping at the roof edge where dangerous ice dams have formed. It's back-breaking work, reaching up with the heavy rake to pull down accumulated snow and ice. Your fingers, despite 2 pairs of mittens, begin to ache within minutes. On the other side of the cabin, your father has climbed onto a stacked pile of firewood to reach the roof near the chimney. He's breaking away ice with a metal tool, sending shards crashing to the ground. Damn near blocked, he calls over. Another day and we'd have had smoke backing up inside. This is no exaggeration. A blocked chimney isn't just inconvenient, it's potentially fatal. Smoke filling the cabin could suffocate the family in their sleep or force them outside into killing temperatures. As you work, your mind drifts to the main task ahead, cutting firewood. Without a steady supply of properly processed wood, the family's sophisticated heating system falls apart, and without heat, winter wins. The Morrison family, like all frontier survivors, had turned firewood preparation into a science. It wasn't just about chopping trees, it was about selecting the right species, cutting at the right time of year, seasoning for the optimal duration, and processing into specific sizes for different heating needs. By the time you finish clearing your section of roof, your father has already moved to the north wall of the cabin, shoveling fresh snow against the base to improve insulation. You join him without being asked. Everyone works without prompting during winter. There's no room for laziness when survival is on the line. Pack it tight, he instructs, demonstrating how to compress the snow into a solid bank against the cabin wall. We want it dense enough to block the wind, not just lying loose. This snowbank hank is ingenious in its simplicity. A free insulation system that can add significant warmth to the cabin interior behind the rough, honeyed logs. Your mother and siblings are depending on these snowbanks to keep the temperature survivable. With the urgent roof and wall work complete, your father leads you toward the barn, a crude structure smaller than the cabin, but critical for sheltering the livestock. Inside, the family milk cow stands shivering despite being wrapped in old blankets and surrounded by hay. She's not doing well, your father says grimly, running his hand along the animal's bony flank. Another night, this cold might finish her. The cow represents one of the family's most valuable possessions, a source of milk, butter, and eventually calves. Losing her would be catastrophic, equivalent to losing thousands of dollars in modern terms. We'll bring her inside tonight, he decides. We'll put her in the corner by the woodpile. This is an extreme measure, bringing livestock into the family living space. The cabin is already cramped with 9 people. Adding a OOOB cow means even less space and the mess that comes with it. But the alternative, losing the animal, is unthinkable. What about the chickens? You ask, nodding toward the second stall, where a dozen hens huddle together, their usual clucking silenced by the cold. They'll stay inside until this cold snap breaks. Your mother won't be happy about the mess, but we can't risk losing them. The winter economy of survival becomes clear in these decisions. Every animal, every cord of wood, every foodstuff preserved. From summer, all are carefully managed resources that stand between the family and starvation or freezing. With the immediate morning tasks complete, your father turns toward the real work of the day. Get the saws and axes, he says. We'll take the sled to the woodlot. The woodlot is a section of forest about a 4-mile from the cabin. Most of the trees immediately surrounding the homestead were cleared during construction years ago, requiring increasingly distant trips for firewood. You retrieve the tools from the lean-to storage, 2 Tallman saws with their distinctive long blades and wooden handles, 3 axes of different sizes, and iron wedges for splitting. Each tool is meticulously maintained, the blades kept sharp with regular filing, the wooden handles rubbed with oil to prevent drying and cracking. John Thomas, wait a moment. Your mother calls from the cabin door. She's wrapped in a shawl, the cold air swirling round her skirts as she hurries toward you with something in her hands. Take these. She's brought 2 pairs of extra wall socks. Put these over your mittens, she instructs. It's too cold for just leather and wool today. This layering technique, wool socks over mittens, provides crucial additional protection for extremities most vulnerable to frostbite. The improvised system works better than any single pair of gloves available at the time. And take this, she adds, handing over a small tin. Inside is a mixture of bear grease and beeswax for your faces. Don't want your skin cracking open. You and your father obediently smear the strong-smelling substance over your exposed skin. It's greasy and unpleasant, but it creates a barrier that helps prevent the brutal combination of cold air and wind from damaging exposed skin. We'll be back before sunset, your father promises. Keep the fire steady. Your mother nods, understanding the subtext of his words. If you aren't back by dark, something has gone very wrong, and she need to make difficult decisions about managing the fire with the limited indoor wood supply. The wooden sled waits beside the barn, a sturdy homemade construction with runners made from curved oak designed to haul heavy loads of wood across snow. In summer, the same wood would be transported by wagon, but snow actually makes the work easier, reducing friction for heavy loads. Your father harnesses himself to the sled using leather straps crossed over his shoulders. You'll help pull too once the sled is loaded with wood. For now, you walk alongside, carrying the smaller tools, while your father drags the heavier saws on the empty sled. The trip to the woodlot is silent, both of you conserving energy and minimizing exposure of your faces to the cold air. Your breath freezes instantly, creating ice in your scarf and around the edges of your hat where it meets your forehead. The forest, when you reach it, feels almost warm compared to the open areas. The trees block the wind, creating a stillness that offers slight relief. Your father stops, surveying the available trees with an expert eye. We need a mix today, he says, his words forming thick clouds in the air. Oak for steady heat, hickory for overnight, and some pine for quick morning fires. He's not just randomly selecting trees. He walks from one to another, examining them, sometimes knocking against the trunks with the back of his axe. This oak's been dead about 2 years, he says, pointing to a medium-sized tree with no bark on its lower trunk. That's perfect for us. Already partially seasoned, but still sound. This is frontier forestry knowledge passed down through generations. A living tree contains too much moisture to burn efficiently. A tree dead too long becomes punky and rotten, burning too quickly with little heat. But a tree dead for 1 to 3 years offers ideal firewood. Naturally dried but still dense with potential energy. We'll take this one first, he decides, positioning himself on one side of the tree. Get on the other end of the saw. The Twuman crosscut saw is a marvel of engineering. A flexible steel blade with specially designed teeth that cut in both directions. You take your position opposite your father, gripping the wooden handle. Remember, he says, let the sword do the work. Don't force it or you'll bind the blade. Long, steady strokes. This is another skill where precision matters more than strength. A properly used saw, even in the hands of a 12-year-old boy, can cut efficiently through hardwood. But poor technique can exhaust even the strongest man and risk damaging expensive tools that can't be easily replaced on the frontier. You begin the rhythmic work, pulling and pushing the saw through the frozen wood. Despite the bitter cold, you soon warm from the exertion, steam rising from your bodies. Your grandfather could cut a cord a day by himself, your father says during a brief pause to catch his breath. Even in his 60s, he outworked men half his age. How'd he do that? You ask, genuinely curious about this legendary woodcutter. He understood wood, comes a simple reply. Knew which trees to take, how to fell them to save work, how to split along The grain, instead of fighting it, said, "A smart man does half the work of a strong, foolish one." This is more than just a story about your grandfather. It's a lesson in frontier efficiency, when every calorie burned requires food that might be in short supply, and when every hour of daylight is precious. Working smart becomes as important as working hard. The tree begins to crack as you near the end of the cut. The weight of the trunk, creating pressure on the saw. "Careful now," your father warns. "It's starting to lean. Step back when I tell you." Felling trees is one of the most dangerous tasks on the frontier. A miscalculation can mean being crushed beneath hundreds of pounds of falling timber, with no doctor, for 50 miles and temperatures that would ensure death before help could arrive. "Back," he shouts as the tree makes a sharp cracking sound. You both step quickly away, moving perpendicular to the fall line. The massive oak seems to hesitate for a moment, then surrenders to gravity, crashing through smaller branches on its way down. The impact, when it hits the ground, sends a shudder through the frozen forest floor. "Good," your father says, with satisfaction. "Fell clean. No hanging branches." That now begins the real labor, transforming this giant tree into precisely sized pieces of firewood that will fit the cabin stove. The trunk must be cut into sections. Those sections split into manageable pieces, and all of it loaded onto the sled and hauled back to the homestead. "Let's buck it into stove lengths," your father says, referring to the process of cutting the fallen trunk into sections. You position the crosscut saw over the trunk, working together to cut it into segments approximately 18 in long, the ideal size for your cabin's stove. This is another example of the precision required for frontier survival. Wood too long won't fit in the stove, too short and it burns too quickly. As you work, your father explains why different types of wood serve different purposes in the heating system. Pine burns hot and fast, good for starting fires or quick heat when you first wake up, he says, between soaring strokes, but it burns too quick for overnight and forms creosote in the chimney. "What's creosote?" you ask, though you've heard this explanation before. It's that black tarry stuff that builds up inside the chimney. If we burned only pine, we'd have to clean the chimney every 2 weeks, or risk a fire that could burn down the whole cabin. This knowledge, understanding the burning properties of different woods and their secondary effects, is life or death information on the frontier. Oak, he continues, burns slower, makes good coals that last, and hickory is the best for overnight. Dense, burn slow and hot. A good hickory log can hold coals till morning if you bank it right. By banking, he means the technique of arranging logs and controlling airflow to maintain a slow, steady burn through the night. It's yet another critical skill that frontier families mastered through necessity. The conversation pauses as you finish cutting a section. Your father sets aside the saw and picks up an axe. "Now for splitting," he says. "Watch how I place the wedge." Split wood burns more efficiently than round logs, offering more surface area for the fire to consume. But splitting requires understanding how wood grain works and where to place tools for maximum effect with minimum effort. Your father studies the oak round, identifying natural checks in the wood that indicate grain direction. He positions an iron wedge along one of these lines, then strikes it firmly with the back of his axe. The frozen wood resists at first, but after 3 solid strikes, a satisfying crack appears, and the round splits partially open. "Oh, see that?" he says, pointing to the split. "Always work with the grain, not against it. Wood wants to split a certain way. Fight it, and you'll work twice as hard." He inserts a second wedge into the growing crack, pounds it deeper, and the round separates into two halves. Those halves will be split again and again until they're the right size for the stove. You join in the splitting work, learning through practice where to place the wedges, how hard to strike, how to read the wood's natural tendencies. It's exhausting work made harder by the cold that stiffens your muscles and steals your body heat. After 2 hours, you've processed about a quarter of the fallen oak. Your father straightens, rubbing his lower back. "We need to pace ourselves," he says. "Still got at least 4 more hours of work, and we need to get back before the storm." He reaches inside his coat and pulls out a small cloth bundle your mother prepared. A few pieces of cold cornbread and strips of dried venison. Not a proper meal by any standard, but critical fuel for bodies working in extreme cold. You eat quickly, sitting on the fallen tree trunk. Despite the brutal temperature, you've worked up enough heat to feel almost comfortable as long as you keep moving. The danger your father has warned many times comes when you stop moving and the sweat freezes against your skin. "Should we get some pine, too?" You ask between bites of the tough venison. Your father nods. "After we finish processing this oak, we'll fell one good pine, then see about a hickory if there's time." As you resume work, your father shifts into teaching mode. Not with formal lessons, but with the practical knowledge transfer that keeps frontier families alive. "The fire is like a living thing," he explains as you split another round. "It needs the right food at the right time, needs to breathe proper, needs watching and tending." He describes how the cabin's heating system works as an integrated whole. The stove itself, with its carefully adjusted dampers, the chimney drawing away smoke while minimizing heat loss, the strategic placement of water containers to the air, the arrangement of furniture to create optimal heat zones. "Your mother knows exactly where to put the baby's cradle," he says. "Not too close to the stove where it's too hot, not too close to the walls where it's too cold. There's a spot where the temperature stays just right and she can find it without thinking." This is the frontier equivalent of modern climate control, a sophisticated understanding of heat dynamics achieved without technology based entirely on observation and traditional knowledge. By mid-morning, you've processed the entire oak tree into perfectly sized firewood stacked neatly on the sled. Your father selects a dead pine next, and together you fell it and cut it into sections. Pine is significantly easier to split than oak, and the work goes quickly. "Oh, storm's coming faster than I thought," your father says suddenly, looking up at the sky, visible through the tree branches. The clear blue of early morning has given way to a flat grey, and the wind is picking up, creating an ominous whistling through the forest canopy. "We'll skip the hickory," he decides. "What we've got, we'll have to do. Let's get this loaded and head back." You help arrange the split wood on the sled, stacking it carefully to maximize the load while keeping it balanced. When finished, the pile stands 4 feet high, secured with rope to prevent logs from falling off during transport. That's about half a cord, your father estimates. Should last us for days if we're careful. Both of you harness yourselves to the loaded sled using the leather shoulder straps. The weight is substantial, several £100 of dense hardwood, but the well-designed runners slide relatively easily over the packed snow. The return journey is much slower than the outbound trip. The loaded sled requires constant attention to prevent it from sliding sideways on slopes or digging into softer snow patches. By the time the cabin comes into view, the wind has increased dramatically, driving fine snow particles that sting any exposed skin. "Just in time," your father says. nodding toward the western sky that has darkened to an ominous purple-gray. Blizzard within the hour, I'd wager. Your mother meets you at the cabin door. Relief evident on her face. Was getting worried. She says, simply helping unfasten the harness straps from your shoulders. Storm's coming fast. How's the fire? Your father asks immediately. Always the first concern. Burning steady. Emma's been tending it just like you showed her. Inside the cabin has reached what passes for comfortable warmth. Perhaps 50 near the stove. Still cold enough to see your breath near the walls. Emma stands by the stove, carefully adjusting a log with the iron poker. At 15, she's already fully capable of managing the critical fire. Good work, your father tells her, inspecting the firebox. Coal beds, perfect. This is high praise in a world where fire management equals survival. Emma beams with pride, despite her exhaustion from tending both fire and younger siblings all morning. We need to get this wood stacked before the storm hits, your father says, already turning back towards the door. John, you stack inside. I'll hand it through. The next half hour is a flurry of activity as the precious firewood is transferred from the sled to the indoor stack. Each piece is briefly inspected for snow or ice and brushed clean. Introducing moisture to the indoor wood supply could compromise its burning quality. The indoor wood pile grows steadily against the wall farthest from the stove, but still well inside the warm zone, where the wood can continue drying. The stack isn't haphazard. The pieces are arranged by type and size, with pine kept separate from oak, and the driest pieces positioned for easy access. That's the last of it, your father announces, handing through the final armload as the wind outside reaches a howling pitch. He steps inside quickly, closing the door against the swirling snow. Storm's here. The family has accomplished the essential task just in time, securing enough firewood to survive what might be days of blizzard conditions. It wasn't just luck or hard work. It was the application of generations of knowledge about forests, tools, wood properties, and weather prediction. Your father moves to the stove, opening the door to check the fire. The interior glows orange-red, with a perfect bed of coals underneath partly burned logs. He adjusts the damper slightly, reducing airflow to slow the burn rate. Now we can ride out the storm, he says with satisfaction. We've got heat, water, and food under our roof. That's all we need. Outside, the blizzard envelops the homestead in a swirling white darkness, but inside, the Morrison family has created their own self-contained world of survival. A carefully engineered microclimate built around the central miracle of controlled fire. As you warm your still cold hands near the stove, you realize that what you've witnessed and participated in today isn't just chores or work. It's the sophisticated thermal engineering that keeps frontier families alive. Through winters that would kill the unprepared within hours, the fire crackles in the stove, consuming the oak you helped harvest with an almost sentient hunger, transforming its stored summer energy into the heat that stands between your family and the deadly cold just beyond the cabin walls. The blizzard rages outside, transforming the Montana landscape into a howling white void. Inside the cabin, your family gathers around the stove, listening to the wind scream through any gap it can find in the walls. Sounds angry out there, Emma says, glancing nervously at the ceiling where the wind occasionally creates an ominous whistling sound. Your father nods. Storm like this would kill a man in minutes, maybe less. You can hear it testing your cabin's defenses, probing, pushing, seeking any weakness. When it finds even the smallest gap, It announces its discovery with a high-pitched whine and a puff of snow particles that dance in the firelight. "Thomas, there's a leak by the north window again," your mother says, pointing to a thin line of snow forming on the sill. Your father frowns. "Thought I fixed that last month." He rises from his seat near the fire, the most coveted spot in the cabin, and moves to examine the window. "The chinking's failed," he announces after a careful inspection. "Colds shrunk the clay and pulled it away from the logs." This isn't just an annoyance. It's a potentially serious breach in the cabin's thermal envelope that could significantly impact the family's ability to maintain survivable temperatures. Every bit of heat that escapes means more precious firewood consumed. "We'll need to remix a batch," he says, turning to your mother. "Sarah, do we still have some of that animal hair saved?" "A small bag in the storage chest," she confirms. "Not much though. We used most of it on the east wall last month." This exchange might seem puzzling to modern ears. Animal hair for repairing a window, but you understand exactly what they mean, having watched and helped with this process many times before. "John," your father says, "fetch the clay pot from behind the stove, the one we've been keeping warm." You retrieve a small clay container that sits in the zone of secondary heat, not directly next to the stove where it might dry out completely, but close enough to keep its contents from freezing. Inside is a mixture of clay soil collected from the creek bed during summer and stored specifically for winter repairs. Your mother opens a small leather pouch containing what looks like a jumbled mess of fur, hair, and wool fibers. Collected remnants from butchered animals, shed livestock hair, and even human hair saved from haircuts. Nothing is wasted in frontier survival. "Emma, bring me the ash bucket," your father instructs. The systems at work here represent centuries of evolved knowledge about insulation. Techniques passed down through generations and refined through brutal trial and error. What your family is preparing is a specialized form of chinking, the material used to seal gaps between logs in cabin construction. Basic chinking might just be clay or mud, but experienced frontier families created sophisticated mixtures that offered superior insulation and durability. The combination of clay, which provides bulk and adhesion, with ash, which makes the mixture more fire-resistant and helps it set, and animal hair, which acts as a binding fiber like rebar in concrete, creates a remarkably effective sealant. "Need to get the consistency right," your father mutters, mixing the components in a small wooden bowl. "Too wet and it'll freeze before it sets. Too dry and it won't stick." This knowledge exactly how to repair materials that will function in sub-zero temperatures is another example of the sophisticated engineering that frontier survival required. It's not written in books, it's passed through direct instruction and experience. "I'll hold the lantern," your mother offers, lifting the coal oil lamp from the table. Extra light is needed for precise work, especially near the darker edges of the cabin. Your father applies the chinking mixture with expert hands, pressing it firmly into the gap where the original material has failed. His fingers, rough and cracked from years of such work, smooths the surface with practiced efficiency. "This should hold," he says, stepping back to examine his work, at least until the temperature rises enough for a proper repair. The entire process took less than 15 minutes, but it represents a critical maintenance task that prevents heat loss. In a modern home, a small draft might go unnoticed or be considered a minor inconvenience. In a frontier cabin during a Montana winter, it could be the difference between survival and death. Your father returns to his place by the stove, warming his hands that have cooled during the repair work. The howling of the wind seems to intensify, as if the storm is frustrated by the family's defenses. "Remember the Andersons' place?" he asks, directing the question to your mother. "Winter of 78. She nods grimly. "Poor construction. Walls might as well have been made of cheesecloth." "What happened to them?" Emma asks, leaning forward with curiosity. Your parents exchange a look, silently debating how much to share with the children. Finally, your father speaks. "They didn't make it through February," he says simply. "Found them all huddled together in the corner. Fire had gone out days earlier from what we could tell. The cabin falls silent, except for the crackling of the fire and the storm's persistent howling. The Andersons' tragedy, an entire family frozen to death in their inadequately insulated cabin, serves as a stark reminder of what's at stake. That's why I'm always fussing about proper chinking and insulation," your father continues after a moment. "It's not just about comfort. It's life and death out here." Little Michael, who has been quietly playing with wooden blocks near the stove, looks up with wide eyes. "Are we going to freeze too, Papa?" "No, son," your father assures him firmly. "Our cabin is strong and tight. Your mama and I made sure of that when we built it." This is no empty boast. The Morrison cabin represents the culmination of frontier insulation knowledge. Techniques developed over generations of harsh winter survival. "Tell us about building the cabin again," William requests, always eager for stories. Your father settles back, warming his hands over the stove. "Well, we didn't just slap some logs together and call it done. That's for certain. What follows is not just a story, but a lesson in frontier construction techniques that have kept your family alive for 6 Montana winters. First thing we did," your father begins, "was choose the right trees. Straight pines, 16 to 18, in thick, with minimal taper. Cut them in early spring when the sap was starting to run, but before full flow. Even the timing of harvest for construction logs was precisely calculated. Trees cut at the wrong time might contain too much moisture, leading to excessive shrinkage as they dried or be more susceptible to insect infestation. We peeled the bark right away," he continues. "Left them to season through summer, turning them regularly so they dry even." Emma, who's heard this story many times, interjects, "And you notched them with a specialized cut so they'd fit tight." Your father nods with approval. "That's right. Saddle notch on the bottom, V-notch on top, creates a self-draining joint that sheds water and doesn't collect moisture that could freeze and split the wood." This level of engineering detail in seemingly simple log construction demonstrates the sophistication hidden in frontier building techniques. Each element serves multiple purposes: structural integrity, weather resistance, and thermal efficiency. But the real secret, he continues, was the double wall construction on the north and west sides. This is the innovation your father is most proud of. A technique he learned from an old trapper who had survived 20 winters in the mountains. "Standard cabins have single walls," he explains for the benefit of the younger children who might not remember the construction details. "But ours has a second inner wall on the sides that take the worst weather, creates a dead airspace between walls. Best insulation there is." The concept of using trapped air as an insulator was understood long before modern fiberglass or foam products. Your father's double wall design created a foreign gap between the outer and inner log walls, which was then filled with a mixture of dried moss, harvested from the forest floor. "Remember gathering all that moss, John?" he asks, turning to you with a smile. Must have collected 100 bushels that summer. You do remember weeks spent carefully harvesting the thick, spongy moss that grows abundantly in shaded forest areas. At the time, it seemed like endless, pointless work for a 12-year-old. Only later did you understand how critical that moss insulation would be for winter survival. And the chinking, your mother adds. That was the real work. Indeed, the initial chinking of the cabin represented perhaps the single most labor-intensive part of construction. Every gap between logs, and there were hundreds, had to be stuffed first with smaller material like moss or cloth scraps, then sealed with the clayish hair mixture your father just used for the repair. Took us nearly a month just to oil the walls, your father recalls. Your mother's fingers were raw from working that clay mix. Worth every blister, she replies simply, glancing at the sturdy walls that now protect her family from certain death outside. The conversation shifts to other insulation innovations that make the Morrison cabin exceptional among frontier dwellings. Your father describes the roof construction, not just simple boards, but a layered system of split logs, birch bark, moor, dried moss, and finally sod cuts from the prairie and carefully arranged in overlapping patterns. The Norwegians up north taught me that technique, he explains. Sod roof keeps heat in during winter, cool in during summer, and the weight presses everything together, makes it more airtight. 6-year-old William, always full of questions, pipes up. But why is the floor so cold if the walls are warm? Your father nods appreciatively at the perceptive question. That's our weak point, he admits. Cold comes right up through the ground. That's why we built the floor, raised off the soil, and stuffed the crawl space with pine boughs. This technique, creating a ventilated crawl space filled with insulating material, was another frontier innovation that helped maintain interior temperatures. The floor still remained the coldest part of the cabin, which is why sleeping platforms were built to elevate beds at least 2 feet above floor level. And remember the paper? Your mother asks. Your father chuckles. 3 years' worth of newspapers from back east. Best wallpaper there is. The interior walls of the cabin are indeed covered with layers of old newspapers pasted directly to the logs with a mixture of flour and water. This served multiple purposes, providing an additional layer of insulation, reducing drafts, reflecting precious lamplight, and even offering some reading material during long winter evenings. The Richardsons' place burned down because they didn't know to keep their newspapers away from the stovepipe. Your father adds soberly, fire risk is the trade-off for better insulation. This balance, finding the optimal point between warmth and safety, characterized so many frontier survival decisions. Too little insulation meant freezing. Too much combustible material near heat sources meant fire risk. The knowledge of exactly where that balance point lay was literally life or death information. Baby Catherine, who has been napping in her mother's arms, stirs and begins to fuss. Your mother stands, rocking her gently. She's too warm now, she says. The repair worked. North corner's heating up. This casual observation reveals another aspect of frontier thermal management. The intimate knowledge of temperature variations within the cabin itself. Your mother can tell the effectiveness of the window repair simply by how her baby feels in a particular corner of the room. No thermometers needed. Should bank the fire a bit, your father suggests. Don't want to overheat and waste wood. Emma moves to the stove, adjusting the damper to reduce airflow and slow the burn rate. This constant fine-tuning of the fire is yet another critical skill. Maintaining optimal temperature with minimal fuel consumption Outside, the blizzard continues unabated, but its howling seems more distant now, less threatening. The family's insulation systems have been tested and proven effective once again. You know, your father says, reflectively, I sometimes think about those fancy houses back east, with their cast iron radiators and coal furnaces. Wonder if they stay as warm as our little cabin. Probably not, your mother replies, with a hint of pride. Those city folks don't understand real insulation. They just throw more coal on the fire when they get cold. There's truth to her words. The Morrison cabin, despite its rustic appearance, represents a highly evolved thermal management system refined through generations of direct survival pressure. Many a wealthy city home of the 1880s, with its high ceilings and decorative but drafty features, would indeed be less efficiently heated. The conversation drifts to the neighbors. Other homesteaders scattered across the valley, each with their own approach to winter survival. Not all are equally successful. Place is drafty as a sieve, your father observes. Henry never did learn proper chinking. Martha said they're going through 20 logs a day just to keep above freezing, your mother adds. Won't make it through February at that rate, comes your father's grim assessment. This isn't idle gossip, but a serious discussion of survival prospects. The McClintock family, new to frontier life, hasn't yet mastered the insulation techniques that the Morrisons have perfected. Their excessive firewood consumption, 20 logs versus the Morrisons' 8 to 10 per day, indicates fundamental flaws in their cabin's thermal efficiency. Should we invite them here if their wood runs out? Emma asks, displaying the frontier ethic of mutual aid despite limited resources. Your parents exchange a look laden with complicated calculations. Compassion versus survival, resources versus risk. We'll help if we can, your father finally says. But we've got to ensure our own family makes it through first. This harsh calculation, determining when help can be offered and when it might jeopardize your own family's survival, is yet another reality of frontier life that modern sensibilities struggle to comprehend. The day progresses, the storm showing no signs of abating. Inside the cabin, the family settles into winter activities. Your mother mending clothes, Emma teaching the younger children their letters using a slateboard. You helping your father repair a broken chair leg throughout the afternoon. Your father performs regular maintenance checks on the cabin's insulation systems, testing for drafts, with the flame of a candle, adjusting the banking of snow against exterior walls, rechecking his earlier repair. Might as well use this storm time to improve things, he declares, eyeing a spot where 2 logs meet near the door. John, let's mix up another batch of chinking. That corner has always been problematic. You work together, preparing the specialized mixture and applying it to several areas where the original material has degraded. Each repair is small, but together they significantly improve the cabin's heat retention. Your grandfather would say a Welch-head cabin is better than another cord of wood, your father remarks as you finish the last spot. Man knew what he was talking about. By late afternoon, the combination of burning oak logs, multiple insulation systems, and careful draft sealing has created a remarkably comfortable environment inside the cabin. Near the stove, the temperature might reach 65, positively luxurious by frontier standards. Even the corners farthest from the heat source remain well above freezing. As dusk approaches, though impossible to see through the blizzard, your father makes preparations for the night. He brings in more wood from the indoor stack, selecting specific pieces for the evening and overnight fire. Need to maintain heat through the night without getting up every hour, he explains as he arranges the logs. That's where real skill comes in. The night fire arrangement is different from daytime. Larger pieces positioned to burn slowly, create a deep coal bed, and maintain consistent heat for the longest possible duration. Your father adds an extra layer of insulating ash over the coals at the bottom, a technique that slows combustion while maintaining temperature. If we do this right, he says, we'll still have live coals at dawn. Won't have to restart from scratch. As darkness falls, the family prepares for bed, not by modern standards of changing into special sleeping clothes, but simply by adding layers. Most frontier families slept in most of their daytime clothing during winter, perhaps removing only the outermost layer. The sleeping arrangements themselves form another part of the Morrison family's insulation strategy. The younger children share a single bed, their combined body heat creating a warm microclimate under layers of quilts. You and Emma have separate pallets, but positioned close together for similar heat-sharing benefits. Your parents perform a final check of the cabin before sleep, testing the stove damper, confirming window coverings are secure, placing heated stones wrapped in rags at the foot of each bed. Should be 20 below by midnight, your father predicts, glancing toward the ice-covered window. Maybe 30 below by dawn. Despite this grim forecast, there's no fear in his voice, just the matter-of-fact assessment of a man who has prepared properly. The Morrison cabin, with its layered insulation systems and carefully managed heat source, stands ready to protect its inhabitants through another brutal Montana night. As you settle into your bed, pulling the heavy quilts up to your chin, you can still hear the storm raging outside, a constant reminder of the deadly environment just beyond the cabin walls. But instead of fear, you feel a deep appreciation for the invisible systems that keep you alive. The double walls with their moss filling, the carefully crafted chinking, the layered roof, the raised floor. These aren't just building techniques, they're the accumulated survival knowledge of generations passed down through direct instruction and hard-won experience. The sophisticated frontier insulation systems that modern technology has largely forgotten, but which once meant the difference between life and death during the long, cold nights of the American frontier. Sometime in the deep night, you wake to the sound of wood splintering. Your eyes snap open in the darkness. For a moment, disoriented from sleep, you wonder if part of the cabin has collapsed under the storm's assault. Thomas, your mother's urgent voice cuts through the darkness. The fire's almost out. You hear your father's quick movements as he slides from beneath the quilts. The cabin has cooled significantly. You can feel it even under your layers of bedding. Watch for nails, your father warns, his voice calm despite the emergency developing. I'm breaking up the chair now. You understand the splintering sound. With the fire dangerously low and the temperature plummeting, your father has made the split-second decision to sacrifice furniture rather than risk losing the fire completely. The sound of breaking wood continues, followed by the creak of the stove door opening. A faint orange glow briefly illuminates your father's face as he carefully feeds splintered chair parts into the dying fire. This is a critical moment in winter survival. The overnight fire has burned down faster than anticipated, perhaps due to the exceptional cold or a log that didn't burn as expected. If it goes out completely, restarting it will consume precious time and resources. While the cabin temperature could drop to dangerous levels, it's catching. Your father reports with evident relief. John, I need you up. We need more wood from the Liantu. That's you. Despite the biting cold, you slide immediately from beneath your quilts. There's no hesitation, no complaints. When survival is at stake, Everyone responds instantly. The cabin air hits you like a physical blow after the warmth of your bed. Your breath forms thick clouds in the darkness as you quickly pull on your boots. You don't bother with additional layers. The trip to the attached lean-to will be brief, and movement will generate some warmth. Your father lights a small candle, its flame looking fragile and uncertain in the cold air. By its light, you follow him to the door that connects to the lean-to. A small, unheated space attached to the main cabin where additional firewood, tools, and some food supplies are stored. "Ready?" he asks, his hand on the door latch. "It'll be bitter out there." You nod, and he pulls the door open. The blast of cold that rushes in makes the earlier cabin air seem warm by comparison. The lean-to, with its uninsulated walls, has reached equilibrium with the outside temperature, perhaps 30 below zero. Working quickly, guided by the wavering candlelight, you and your father select armloads of wood from the stacked supply. Your fingers, exposed to the brutal cold, begin to ache almost immediately. After 30 seconds, they burn. After a minute, they start to go numb, the first warning sign of incipient frostbite. "Enough," your father says, noticing your increasingly clumsy movements. Back inside, you return to the main cabin, closing the door firmly behind you. The wood is stacked beside the stove, and your father immediately begins adding pieces to the fire, which has begun to recover thanks to his emergency intervention with the chair. "Get those hands near the stove," your mother instructs, now fully awake and moving about the cabin, but not too close. You know the routine. Indeed, you do. Warming dangerously cold extremities requires careful technique. Too much heat, too quickly, can cause tissue damage as painful as the frostbite itself. You extend your hands toward the stove, keeping them about a foot away from the metal surface that has begun to glow dull red in spots. Your mother approaches with a small tin of bear grease, the frontier equivalent of modern petroleum jelly. "Let me see," she says, taking your hands and examining them critically in the growing firelight. "No whiteness," she pronounces after careful inspection. "Just reamed. You'll be fine." This casual diagnosis masks the seriousness of what's being checked. True frostbite, where skin actually freezes, appears as waxy white patches. It represents tissue death and, in severe cases, can lead to the loss of fingers, toes, or even limbs. Frontier families became expert at recognizing its earliest signs and intervening before permanent damage occurred. "Rub this in," she instructs, handing you the tin of grease. "Then put these on." These are heavy mittens knitted from wool and lined with rabbit fur, the most effective hand protection the family possesses. They're normally reserved for long periods outside in the worst weather, but tonight's fire emergency has warranted their use. As you massage the greasy substance into your reamed skin, the burning sensation intensifies briefly, then begins to fade as circulation returns. The bear grease serves multiple purposes, creating a moisture barrier, reducing evaporative, cooling, and providing lubrication for skin that becomes dangerously dry in winter conditions. Your father has the stove burning properly now, adding carefully selected pieces to rebuild the coal bed that will provide consistent heat. The immediate crisis has passed. "That was close," he mutters, more to himself than anyone else. "Too close." Even with all their knowledge and preparation, the Morrison family has just experienced how quickly a winter situation can become dangerous. A fire burning down faster than expected during the night represents one of the most common threats to frontier survival. By now, Everyone in the cabin is awake. Emma has taken charge of the younger children, helping them pull their bedding closer to the stove where it's warmest. Even in emergency situations, the family operates with practiced efficiency. Each person, knowing their role, will need to reorganize the sleeping tonight, your father announces. It's going to get colder still before dawn. This statement carries significant weight. The family's standard sleeping arrangements, already designed for optimal heat conservation, will need enhancement to counter the exceptional cold. Body heat shelter. Your mother asks, and your father nods. I think so. Better safe than sorry. The body heat shelter is a frontier survival technique reserved for the most extreme cold. You've only experienced it twice before during particularly brutal cold snaps, when the temperature dropped below 40 below zero. John, Emma, help me move the table, your father instructs. Together, you push the family's main table against the wall, farthest from any windows or doors. Next, your father retrieves several spare quilts from the storage chest, and with your mother's help, begins arranging them to create a makeshift tent using the table as a support structure. William, Michael, bring your bedding. Emma directs the younger boys. Catherine will sleep between Mama and Papa. The concept behind the body heat shelter is simple but incredibly effective. By creating a small enclosed space with bodies and bedding, the family can generate and trap enough heat to maintain safe temperatures even if the cabin's main space becomes dangerously cold. Remember, your father reminds everyone as the shelter takes shape. No gaps in the quilts. We want it sealed tight. The resulting structure looks primitive, essentially a table with quilts draped over it extending to the floor on all sides, but represents sophisticated thermal engineering principles. The small enclosed volume, heat-reflective barriers, and multiple human heat sources combine to create a microclimate that can be 20-30 warmer than the main cabin. I'll stay up and tend the fire, your father decides. The rest of you get in and keep warm. Your mother shakes her head firmly. We'll take shifts. You need rest, too. After brief negotiation, they agree to 2-hour rotations. Your father taking the first watch, followed by your mother, then you and Emma sharing the final pre-dawn shift. By now, the main fire has been fully restored, the stove once again radiating precious heat, but the wind outside has intensified, driving temperatures down further and finding new ways to infiltrate the cabin's defenses. Might as well get dressed properly, your mother decides. No point trying to sleep in just night clothes on a night like this. This initiates another critical aspect of frontier winter survival, the layering system for extreme cold. Each family member begins adding clothing layers according to a specific strategy developed through generations of trial and error. Start with the wool. Your mother reminds the younger children as she helps them dress. Cotton kills. This stark phrase, cotton kills, represents vital frontier knowledge that modern outdoor enthusiasts have had to relearn. Cotton garments, once wet from perspiration, lose all insulating properties and actually draw heat from the body. Wool, by contrast, maintains most of its insulating value even when damp. The base layer for everyone is wool, long underwear for the adults and older children, simple wool shirts and leggings for the younger ones. Over this goes a middle layer, typically flannel or more wool, then a heavier outer layer, even though you're indoors. Don't forget your heads, your mother says, distributing knitted wool caps. That's where most heat escapes. This understanding of the body's heat loss patterns informed frontier clothing design long before modern thermal imaging confirmed that up to 30% of body heat can be lost through an uncovered head. The family socks receive particular attention. Everyone puts on fresh, dry wool socks. Some hand-knitted by your mother from the family's sheep. Others purchased during infrequent trips to town. Those with particularly cold, sensitive feet add a second pair. John, check everyone's feet before they go into the shelter. Your father instructs as he adjusts the stove damper. Any dampness needs to be addressed now. This focus on dry feet isn't mere comfort, it's survival. Damp feet in cold conditions quickly lead to a condition frontier people called immersion foot, similar to what soldiers would later call trench foot. The condition can progress from painful discomfort to tissue, death and gangrene with surprising speed. You move among your siblings, checking their socks and feet with practiced efficiency. Emma, at 15, has already completed her own inspection. 6-year-old William and 4-year-old Michael submit to your examination without complaint. They've been raised understanding these procedures are non-negotiable. Michael's left sock has a damp spot at the heel. You report to your mother, who immediately retrieves a replacement from the drying rack near the stove. With everyone properly layered, your mother organizes the entry into the body heat shelter. It's not simply a matter of crawling inside. There's a specific arrangement to maximize warmth and comfort. Catherine in the middle, she directs, placing the toddler in the center of the enclosed space. Boys on either side, then Emma and John on the outside since you're oldest. This arrangement places the youngest, most vulnerable family members at the core of the human heating system, surrounded by the larger bodies of older children and adults. The physics is straightforward. Smaller bodies have greater surface area relative to their mass and lose heat more quickly. By positioning them centrally, they benefit from heat radiating from larger bodies on all sides. Your father, taking the first fire-tending shift, helps adjust the quilt walls of the shelter once everyone is inside. Keep these sealed tight, he reminds you. Don't let the warm air escape when you shift positions. Inside the shelter, the effect is immediate and remarkable. The combined body heat of 6 people trapped in the small enclosed space creates a warming effect that no stove could match for efficiency. Within minutes, the temperature inside the quilt structure rises noticeably. It's working, Emma whispers, already removing her wool cap as the space warms. The younger children, initially tense from the emergency and cold, begin to relax as warmth envelops them. Little Catherine, nestled between her brothers, drifts back to sleep almost immediately. From your position near the edge of the shelter, you can hear your father moving about the cabin, tending the fire and checking for drafts. Occasionally, the wind outside rises to a crescendo that drowns out all other sounds, a reminder of the deadly conditions just beyond the cabin walls. Despite the circumstances, there's a strange comfort to the body heat shelter, a return to the most primitive and effective form of warming. Modern humans rarely experience the profound comfort of shared body heat in enclosed spaces, but for thousands of years, it was humanity's primary defense against deadly cold. Try to sleep, your mother encourages from her position opposite you. Your shift will come soon enough. Sleep does come surprisingly easily in the cocoon-like warmth of the shared space. When your father gently shakes your shoulder for the change of watch, it feels like only minutes have passed, though his 2-hour shift has ended. Your mother's taking over now, he whispers. I'll join you all in another 2 hours. He slides into the space your mother has vacated, his body still radiating cold from his time tending the fire. The children instinctively shift toward this new heat source as he settles in. It's down to 40 below, outside, he reports quietly. Maybe lower, can't really tell. Thermometer only goes to -40. This casual mention of such extreme temperature, cold that can freeze exposed human flesh in under a minute, highlights the razor's edge separating the family from the deadly conditions outside. Only their sophisticated, layered defenses, the insulated cabin, the carefully managed fire, the body heat shelter, and the layered clothing stand between them and certain death. Your mother's shift passes, and then it's time for you and Emma to take the final watch before dawn. You emerge from the warm shelter into the cabin's main space, which feels shockingly cold by comparison. Stoves burning well, your mother reports, as she prepares to join the others in the shelter. Add wood every 30 minutes, no more than 2 pieces at a time. We need to stretch our supply. You and Emma nod, understanding the critical nature of fire management. With the temperature so low, the margin for error has disappeared completely. Check everyone's exposed skin when you wake them, she adds, especially fingertips and noses. This kind of cold is treacherous. As your parents settle into the shelter, you and Emma take up positions near the stove. Despite being indoors, you both wear your full cold weather gear. Multiple layers of wool, heavy socks, caps, and mittens that can be removed temporarily for fire tending. I'll make coffee, Emma whispers, reaching for the metal coffee pot. Might as well have something warm to drink while we wait. This small luxury, coffee brewed from carefully rationed beans, represents another aspect of frontier winter survival. Hot liquids provide internal warming that radiates outward, complementing the external heat sources. As Emma prepares the coffee, you check the cabin's defenses one final time, ensuring window coverings remain secure, examining chinking for new failures, confirming the door remains sealed against the brutal cold. Storms still going, you report, placing your hand near a small gap in the window covering and feeling the frigid air seeping through, maybe even stronger. The blizzard has now continued for nearly 24 hours, a marathon assault of wind, cold, and snow that tests every aspect of the family's survival systems. Without the knowledge accumulated through generations of frontier experience, they would have succumbed hours ago. Emma hands you a tin cup of steaming coffee. Remember last winter? She asks. The Petersons' place? You nod, sipping the bitter but warming liquid. The Petersunen family, relatively new to frontier life, had struggled through their first Montana winter. By February, with supplies dwindling and their poorly constructed cabin providing inadequate protection, they'd been forced to slaughter their only milked cow for food. Papa says they'll probably head back east come spring, Emma continues. Says, not everyone's cut out for frontier winters. This understated assessment masks the brutal reality. Frontier winter survival separated the prepared from the unprepared with deadly efficiency. Those who failed to master the complex systems of thermal management rarely survived multiple winters. The hours of your watch pass slowly. Every 30 minutes, as instructed, you add precisely 2 pieces of wood to the fire, selecting each for its burning properties and positioning it carefully for optimal heat production. Between these critical fire tending moments, you and Emma talk quietly, sharing the kind of conversations that only happen in the deep stillness of winter nights. As the first hint of dawn lightens the cabin's interior, your father emerges from the body heat shelter. Despite the circumstances, he looks surprisingly rested. Made it through another one, he says, with simple satisfaction. Moving to the stove to check your fire management work, Good job maintaining the coal bed. This small praise acknowledgement of properly executed survival skills carries more weight than elaborate compliments might in another context. On the frontier, doing things right means living to see another day. Your mother joins him, and together they begin the process of dismantling the body heat shelter and returning the cabin to its daytime configuration. The younger children, still bundled in multiple layers, remain asleep on their bedding, now arranged near the stove. Storms breaking, your father announces after briefly pulling aside a window covering to glance outside. Winds dropping and skies lightning to the east. This news brings palpable relief. A blizzard's end means the most acute danger has passed, though the extreme cold will likely remain for days. As full daylight arrives, the family begins its morning routine, albeit with adjustments for the exceptional cold. The water bucket, despite being kept near the stove overnight, has a thick crust of ice that must be broken before morning washing can begin. 43 below on the north wall thermometer, your father reports, after checking the instrument mounted outside a small window. Never seen it that cold this early in January. Yet, despite this record-breaking temperature, the Morrison family has survived the night comfortably, not by modern standards of comfort perhaps, but without danger or significant hardship. Their layered approach to cold protection, from cabin construction to fire management to clothing strategies to the body heat shelter, has proven equal to even this extreme challenge. As you help prepare the morning meal, you realize that what your family accomplished last night wasn't just survival. It was the application of sophisticated thermal engineering developed through generations of hard-won knowledge. Systems so effective that even in conditions that would kill unprotected humans in minutes, your family slept safely through the night. This is the forgotten science of frontier winter survival. Not just enduring the cold, but mastering it through integrated systems of protection that modern technology has largely rendered obsolete, but which once meant the difference between life and death on the American frontier. 3 days after the blizzard, the brutal cold still grips the valley, but the skies have cleared to a crystalline blue that almost hurts to look at. The sun shines with blinding intensity over a transformed landscape. Snow sculpted into otherworldly shapes by the wind, ice crystals hanging from every tree branch. The world frozen into a deadly beauty. Your father stands in the doorway of the cabin, surveying the scene with a practiced eye. Need to check on the neighbors, he announces. McAlintox haven't got enough experience for cold like this. Is it safe? Your mother asks, concern evident in her voice. He nods. Winds died completely. Cold still dangerous, but manageable if we're prepared. He turns to you. John, you're coming with me. 2 is safer than 1 in these conditions. This isn't a request, but a statement of fact. At 12, you're considered old enough to participate in community welfare checks. A critical aspect of frontier winter survival that modern isolation has largely forgotten. Bundle up properly, your mother instructs, already gathering your heaviest outdoor gear. Full layers, no shortcuts. The preparations for venturing outdoors in 40 below temperatures are elaborate and methodical. First comes the base layer of wool undergarments, then a middle layer of flannel, followed by heavy wool pants and shirts. Over this goes a buckskin vest lined with rabbit fur, and finally a heavy canvas coat with a hood lined with bear fur. Your feet receive special attention. First, a layer of thin cotton socks, the rare appropriate use of cotton in winter as they wick moisture away from the skin. Then, 2 pairs of heavy wool socks, and finally, moccasins lined with rabbit fur. and wrapped with canvas leggings tied securely above the calf. Your hands are similarly protected, thin liner gloves covered by heavy mittens lined with fur and designed with an extra-long cuff that extends well up the forearm, preventing any gap where cold air might reach the wrist. Face covering, your father reminds, handing you a wool scarf that's been carefully stored near the stove to ensure it's completely dry. Moisture in fabrics from breath or sweat can freeze instantly in such cold, transforming protective clothing into dangerous conductors of deadly chill. The final preparation is food. Your mother hands each of you a small cloth bundle, she explains, and a piece of the dried apple cake. If you get caught out there longer than expected, you'll need the energy. Pemmican, a concentrated mixture of dried meat, fat, and berries, represents the frontier equivalent of modern emergency rations. Dense with calories and resistant to spoilage, it provides critical energy in survival situations. We'll head to the McClintocks first, then check on Old Man Patterson if there's time. Your father decides, making final adjustments to his gear. Should be back before midday. The unspoken danger hangs in the air. If you're not back by then, something has gone very wrong. In such extreme cold, extended exposure inevitably leads to frostbite, hypothermia, and death. Take the emergency kit, your mother insists, handing your father a small leather pouch that contains fire-starting materials, additional pemmican, and basic medical supplies. With a final check of your clothing, ensuring no skin remains exposed, except for a narrow band around the eyes, you and your father step out into the killing cold. The sensation is immediate and shocking. Despite all the protective layers, the air itself feels solid, as though you're moving through an invisible barrier that resists every step. Your breath freezes instantly, creating a rim of ice on your scarf within seconds. Keep moving, your father reminds, his voice muffled through his face covering. And watch for signs. The signs he refers to are the early indicators of frostbite or hypothermia. A buzzing in the ears, a prickling sensation in extremities followed by alarming numbness, or the dangerous euphoria that sometimes precedes freezing to death. The McClintock homestead lies about a mile away, normally a 20-knot walk, but in these conditions it will take nearly twice that. Your father sets a deliberate pace, not so fast that sweating becomes a danger, not so slow that body heat production drops. The snow squeaks beneath your feet with each step, that distinctive sound that only occurs in the deepest cold where drifts have formed. You must lift your feet high to clear the surface, an exhausting process that quickly builds heat in the large muscles of the legs. That's why we don't wear too many layers on the legs, your father explains, noticing your exertion. They generate their own heat if you keep moving. It's the extremities we have to worry about. This knowledge, understanding precisely how the body loses and generates heat during extreme cold exposure, represents another aspect of frontier survival science that has largely been forgotten in the age of central heating and automobiles. As you walk, your father quizzes you on cold weather survival knowledge, not as a formal lesson, but as a way to pass time while ensuring you remain alert to danger. What's the first sign of frostbite on the face? He asks, his eyes constantly scanning the terrain ahead. White patches on the skin. You answer promptly, usually cheeks, nose, or ears first. And if you notice it on yourself or someone else, cover the area immediately and warm it gradually with body heat. Never rub it or apply direct heat from a fire. He nods approval. And the most dangerous kind of snow for walking, powder over crust, you reply, looks solid but breaks through unpredictably, wastes energy and can cause falls or injuries. This call and response ritual serves multiple purposes: reinforcing critical knowledge, maintaining mental alertness in conditions where the mind can become dangerously sluggish, and providing reassurance through familiar patterns. After 30 minutes of careful hiking, the McClintock cabin comes into view through a stand of pine trees. Unlike the Morrison homestead with its carefully banked snow and sealed windows, the McClintock place shows worrying signs of inexperience. Minimal snow banking against the walls, chimney with lighter smoke than would be expected in such cold, and no visible preparations for water access. Not good, your father mutters. No activity outside. Should have at least cleared a path to the woodpile. As you approach closer, the situation becomes clearer. There are no tracks in the snow around the cabin, not even to the outhouse, suggesting the family hasn't ventured outside since the blizzard began 4 days ago. Hello, the house. Your father calls when you're about 50 yards away. Approaching a frontier cabin unannounced could be dangerous. In isolated areas, strangers might be met with caution or even a rifle. No response comes. Your father frowns beneath his scarf and moves closer, calling again with greater volume. Finally, the cabin door opens slightly, and Henry McClintock's face appears, haggarded, worried, and showing the unmistakable redness of someone who's been too close to a fire for too long. Thomas, he calls uncertainly. Thomas Morrison. It's me, Henry. Came to check on you folks after that blow. Relief washes over McClintock's face. Thank God. Come in. Please come in. The interior of the McClintock cabin presents a concerning scene. Unlike the ordered functionality of your family's home with its strategic arrangement for optimal heat distribution, the McClintocks have crowded around their stove in desperation. Bedding has been dragged near the heat source. Cooking implements lie scattered about, and the air has the distinct staleness of a space that hasn't been properly ventilated despite continuous fire use. Martha McClintock sits wrapped in blankets, their 2 small children huddled against her. All 3 look exhausted with the hollowed appearance of people who haven't slept properly in days. We've been burning everything we can find, Henry explains, gesturing to the stove, where furniture fragments are clearly visible among the proper firewood, down to the last of our wood supply. Didn't expect it to get this cold so early in the season. Your father takes in the situation with a quick, experienced assessment. How's your food holding up? Running low, Henry admits. Haven't been able to get to our root cellar since the storm hit. Too much snow drifted against the door. This represents a cascade of failures in winter preparedness. Inadequate wood supply, poor access planning for food storage, and insufficient knowledge of how to manage a frontier home during extreme cold. We'll dig out your cellar, your father decides, and I'll show you some techniques for stretching your wood supply. John, start with the snow clearing while I check their chimney and stove setup for the next 2 hours. You and your father work to address the most critical issues threatening the McClintock family's survival. You clear paths to their woodpile and root cellar. Show Henry how to properly bank snow against the cabin walls for insulation, and demonstrate more efficient fire management techniques. Inside, your father makes several crucial adjustments to their stove and living arrangements. He rearranges their furniture to create a smaller warm zone that requires less fuel to heat, adjusts the damper on their stove, which had been incorrectly set, causing excessive wood consumption, and shows Martha how to create a simple body heat shelter similar to what your family used during the worst of the cold. You're wasting half your heat up the chimney, he explains to Henry, who watches with a mixture of embarrassment and gratitude. and these gaps around your windows are like throwing wood directly into the snow. While the men work on the heating system, you notice Martha McClintock watching intently as your father demonstrates various techniques. Unlike her husband, whose pride occasionally surfaces in defensive comments, she shows the focused attention of someone who recognizes that knowledge equals survival. How do you keep your children's feet warm at night? She asks when Henry steps outside to help you with the snow clearing. My little ones cry from cold toes despite all our blankets. Your father explains the heated stone technique your family uses, warming rocks near the stove, wrapping them properly, and placing them at the foot of beds to provide hours of gentle heat. Martha listens with fierce concentration, mentally recording every detail. And your windows, she continues, they don't frost over inside like ours do. What's your secret? Double covering, he explains. Oiled paper against the glass for insulation, then heavy quilts over that, and we stuff rags in any gaps around the frame. Every little crack lets precious heat escape. This knowledge exchange represents one of the most critical aspects of frontier winter survival, the passing of tested techniques from experienced families to newcomers, without books, formal education, or other information sources about extreme cold survival. This Passantorson transmission of knowledge was often the only way inexperienced settlers could learn to survive their first serious winters. By midday, the situation at the McClintock homestead has improved significantly. Their wood supply, while still concerning, will last longer with proper fire management. The newly accessible root cellar provides additional food security, and most importantly, they now possess knowledge that will help them adapt to frontier winter conditions. We can't thank you enough, Henry says, as you prepare to leave. The strain of pride is evident in his voice. A man struggling to accept help while knowing his family's survival depends on it. No need for thanks, your father replies simply. That's how it works out here. My first winter, old Jim Barker did the same for our family. You'll do it for someone else someday. This paying forward of survival knowledge formed a crucial social bond in frontier communities, a recognition that harsh environments required cooperation despite the fierce independence frontier life otherwise encouraged. As you and your father prepare to depart, Martha presses a small bundle into your hands. Fresh bread, she explains. Made it yesterday with the last of our white flour. Please take it with our thanks. This offering, precious white flour transformed into bread during a survival situation, represents more than simple gratitude. It's an acknowledgement of community bonds and mutual aid that transcend mere transactions. We'll check back in a few days, your father promises. Weather's supposed to moderate by week's end. You'll make it through fine now that you know what to do. The return journey to your cabin takes less time, partly because the trail is now broken, and partly because the sun has raised the temperature slightly, perhaps to a mere 30 below instead of 40. Think they'll make it? You ask your father as the Morrison homestead comes into view. He considers the question seriously. They will now. Another day or two and it might have been a different story. That stove setup was dangerously inefficient, and they were burning through their wood at 3 times the necessary rate. This assessment isn't callous, but factual. Some more, I'm sure, for on the frontier survival margins could be calculated with mathematical precision. The McClinnotocks had been on a trajectory toward a freezing cabin within days, with predictably fatal results. Martha's the one who will keep them alive, your father adds. After a moment, she was listening and learning. Henry's still got too much pride to admit how much he doesn't know. This gendered dimension of frontier knowledge transfer often goes unrecognized in romantic depictions of Western settlement. While men might handle the heaviest physical tasks, women frequently became the knowledge keepers of crucial domestic survival techniques: fire management, food preservation, textile creation, and medical care that kept families alive through harsh winters. Upon returning home, your mother greets you both with evident relief. "The Patterson place?" she asks, noting, "You've returned earlier than might be expected if you'd completed both planned visits." "Didn't make it there," your father explains, removing his outer layers carefully to prevent snow from melting onto the cabin floor. "McClintock's needed more help than I anticipated. We'll check on Patterson tomorrow if the weather holds." Over coffee and the bread Martha provided, your father describes the McClintock situation in detail. Your mother listens with the serious attention the subject deserves, occasionally asking clarifying questions about their supplies and equipment. "Should we invite them here?" she asks when he finishes. "They could stay until the worst passes." Your father considers this generous offer. "They're stable now with what we showed them. Better for them to learn in their own cabin if they can manage it. Builds confidence and skills they'll need for the rest of winter." This assessment reflects a deeper frontier wisdom. Sometimes immediate rescue can ultimately reduce long-term survival chances by preventing necessary skill development. The delicate balance between helping neighbors and fostering self-sufficiency represented one of the most nuanced aspects of frontier community ethics. "I told Martha about the winter community gathering," your father adds, "said we'd take them along if they wanted to go." The winter community gathering he refers to is a tradition among the scattered homesteaders of your valley, a monthly meeting during the coldest season where families travel to a central location, usually the largest cabin, to share food, company, and most importantly, knowledge. "It's at the Hendersons' place this month," your mother confirms. 3 days from now, if the weather permits." Mary Henderson specifically mentioned she'd be demonstrating that new wool spinning technique she learned from the Swedish family up north. These gatherings served multiple crucial functions in frontier winter survival, breaking the dangerous psychological isolation that contributed to cabin fever, creating opportunities for knowledge exchange, and establishing community bonds that could be activated during emergencies. "I should prepare something to share," your mother muses. "Perhaps I'll demonstrate that new pemmican recipe with the dried berries, and Emma can show her mitten lining technique." This casual planning highlights another aspect of frontier knowledge systems: the expectation that each family would contribute to the community's collective wisdom. Even children participated, with older ones often teaching skills to younger ones from different families. The following day brings slightly moderated temperatures, perhaps 20 below instead of 40, and your father declares it's safe enough for a quick trip to check on Old Man Patterson, the elderly widower whose cabin sits about 2 miles east of your homestead. Unlike the McClintocks, Patterson is a seasoned frontiersman who has survived decades of Montana winters. His concern is not lack of knowledge, but advancing age and isolation that makes self-sufficiency increasingly challenging. You accompany your father again, bringing a parcel your mother has prepared: fresh bread, some preserved venison, and dried apples. These aren't just food gifts, but crucial nutritional supplements for an elderly person living alone who might be tempted to neglect proper meals. Patterson's cabin, when you reach it, shows all the signs of experienced winter adaptation: carefully banked snow, properly managed chimney, and paths cleared to essential areas despite the old man's limited strength. Unlike the desperate situation, Patterson has his survival systems well in order. Thought you might have frozen solid in that blow. The old man greets you with gruff affection when you arrive. Despite being in his 70s, he remains spry and alert, a testament to the preserving effects of frontier self-sufficiency. Checking on all the neighbors on your father explains, "How's your wood supply holding?" "Good enough," Patterson replies, leading you inside where his cabin reveals meticulous organization, wood stacked by type and size, preserved foods arranged for efficient access, and sleeping area optimized for heat conservation. Been at this long enough to know what I need before winter sets in. The visit is brief but important, confirming the old man's welfare while reinforcing community bonds. Patterson, despite his independence, understands the value of these connections. Coming to the gathering at Henderson's, your father asks as you prepare to leave. Patterson nods. "Wouldn't miss it. Got some new ideas about snowshoe bindings I want to share, and frankly could use the company." This honest admission that even the most self-sufficient frontiersman needs human connection during the isolated winter months highlights the psychological aspects of survival that pure technical knowledge cannot address. As you return home, your father uses the journey as another opportunity for instruction, but with a different focus than the previous day's technical lessons. Community is as important as firewood in winter, he explains, as you trudge through the snow. Humans aren't made to be completely alone. Isolation kills as surely as cold, just slower and in different ways. This wisdom, understanding that survival depends on social systems as much as technical knowledge, represents one of the most sophisticated aspects of frontier winter adaptation. The homesteaders who survived longest weren't just technically skilled, but socially connected, forming resilient networks of knowledge, exchange, and mutual aid. Back at your cabin, preparations begin for the upcoming community gathering. Your mother sorts preserved foods to share. Emma works on completing a pair of specially lined mittens to demonstrate her technique, and even the younger children participate by helping prepare simple gifts for other families. Carved wooden toys and carefully preserved pine cones, decorated with scraps of colored fabric. These preparations represented more than mere habit or courtesy. They were investments in a knowledge economy and mutual aid systems that frontier communities developed to survive winters that would kill isolated individuals, regardless of skill or supplies. As evening approached, and the family gathered around the stove for the night's meal, your father made a surprising announcement. "I've invited the McClintock's family to stay with us tomorrow night," he said. "Temperature's supposed to drop again, and I'm not confident their cabin is ready. We'll take them to the Henderson gathering the following day." Your mother nodded without hesitation. Despite the additional strain on food supplies and sleeping arrangements, "I'll prepare the corner space for them. The children can share with ours." This decision to bring another family into an already crowded cabin demonstrated the frontier, understanding that survival sometimes required direct intervention beyond mere knowledge sharing. Henry McClintock hesitated, pride evident in his posture, but Martha's calm reassurance convinced him of the stakes. Women often made the pragmatic survival decisions that male pride might otherwise prevent, a recurring theme in frontier life. As darkness fell, the nightly fire-banking ritual began, and you reflected on the community dimensions of winter survival you'd witnessed over the past 2 days. Fire management, insulation, clothing systems, all critical, but equally important were social connections, knowledge exchange networks, and mutual aid. This was the forgotten social science of frontier winter survival. Not just knowing how to stay warm, but knowing how communities ensured survival in conditions that would kill even the most skilled individual acting alone. The day of the community gathering dawned, clear but brutally cold. The McClintock's family had arrived the previous evening, Henry, Martha, and their 2 children, Alice, age 7, and Peter, age 4, exhausted but relieved to be in a properly heated cabin. Your mother had reorganized sleeping arrangements, creating space by moving your siblings into your bed area and preparing a separate spot near the stove for the McClintock's children. Despite the crowding, the additional body heat actually made the cabin warmer during the night, as dawn light filtered through frosted window coverings. Your father stood by the stove, conferring quietly with Henry. They planned the 5 journey to the Henderson homestead for the community gathering, normally routine. This trip became serious under the extreme cold and with children along. We'll take both sleds, your father decided, one for supplies, one for the younger children if they can't manage the walk, and we'll bring emergency gear. No journey, however routine, was undertaken without contingency planning. You helped gather the leather pouches from storage, fire starting, shelter making, emergency food, and basic medical supplies. The fire starting kit was critical: flint and steel, a magnifying glass, a fire piston, char cloth, birch bark, pine resinol, designed to create life-saving embers under damp, sub-zero conditions. The shelter kit contained canvas, rope, and safety pins for improvised windbreak. The food pack held pemmican, dried fruit, salt, and sugar. Each component was the result of generations of trial and error knowledge. Before departure, your mother and Martha prepared hot tea and layered clothing for the children. Hydration, warmth, and layering were meticulously considered. By mid-morning, the families were ready. Your father gathered everyone for a final briefing. Stay together. No one gets more than 20 feet from the group. If you feel cold in your fingers, toes, or face, tell an adult immediately. If anyone needs to stop, everyone stops. Emergency shelters were marked along the Ruta Rock outcropping, a dense pine stand, a small cave. Henry McClintock listened intently, now receptive after a recent brush with danger. Signals for separation in a whiteout were agreed upon. 3 short whistle blasts, pause, then 2 more. Everyone carried a whistle on a leather cord. The 10 travelers moved as a cohesive unit, adults on the perimeter, children in the center. Your father led, breaking trail, while Henry pulled the supply sled. The temperature was 15 below zero. Any exposed skin could freeze in minutes, and a breakdown in clothing or shelter systems could be life-threatening. Halfway to the Henderson homestead, subtle signs indicated a sudden weather change. The clear sky darkened, wind shifted, light quality altered, skills honed through generations. No, your father said. Henderson's is closer than home now, but we need to pick up the pace. The younger children rode the sleds permanently. Rest stops were brief, and emergency preparedness remained constant. Soon, the wind intensified, carrying ice particles, and the temperature dropped further. Your father spotted a small abandoned line shack half a mile east. Better shelter than Henderson if this turns into a full-blown storm, he decided. Henry deferred without hesitation, a stark change from earlier pride. The families altered course. Children remained quiet. Sensing the seriousness, your father distracted them with stories of past winter adventures, teaching survival wisdom subtly while maintaining morale. The line shack appeared, partially buried in snow. Inside, your father and Henry implemented the emergency shelter protocol, sealing gaps with canvas, clearing the fireplace, and methodically building a single match fire using char cloth, birch bark, and pine splinters. Fire secured, adults arranged children closest to the heat, forming a protective perimeter. Food was prepared from emergency supplies, a simple soup with dried meat, preserved vegetables, and barley. Small treats, like sugar mixed with snow, lifted spirits. Every person was checked for cold injury. Peter McClintock's damp boot was addressed immediately, preventing frostbite. The storm raged outside, but the line shack offered a controlled, survivable environment. Adults rotated watches, ensuring continuous fire maintenance and monitoring for hypothermia. By dawn, conditions improved. The families delayed departure another hour, preparing carefully before resuming travel. When they finally reached Henderson's, the snow-strewn homestead welcomed them without question. Your father casually mentioned the emergency stop at the Carson Line shack. Smart move, Adam Henderson said. That was a mean little blow. The gathering proceeded. Exchange, wool-spinning demonstrations, food preservation tips, and children sharing handmade toys. What you witnessed was a resilient human system. Technical knowledge of survival integrated with social cooperation. Each cabin, fire, and food ration represented generations of life or death experience. Mutual aid, observation, and careful preparation created a survival network far more sophisticated than modern technology-dependent travelers usually require. As you imagine the modern comfort of your own bed, reflect on this comprehensive frontier wisdom. The quiet confidence of knowing exactly how to stay alive in conditions most would find unimaginable. Relying not on technology, but on knowledge, preparation, and community.